Good morning.
Good morning.
From Easier Habits Live, I'm Alec from Easier Habits.
Yay, and I'm Meg. I'm a global English communication coach.
All right, and today we'll talk about asking for stuff.
Asking for stuff! Yeah, Alec was asking me like, okay, so what should we talk about today? And I was thinking, well, let's just talk about it. And then, he was saying, well, I have to put in a title. And I was like, asking for stuff? So that's, hence the beautiful title. Anyways, but we'll get started with the communication tip. So yesterday I talked about being concise, and one thing that I hear a lot is, how do I know if I'm being concise or wordy or whatever? How do I know that I am giving enough information without giving too much? And as, I help people work through that. I usually say, well, there's a few things that you're definitely going to want to include, right? What is the thing you're trying to say? And then how does it work and why should we care? So the what would also include things like if you're giving a pitch, who's it for and where they would use it or when or whatever. But as far as the kind of WH questions, the what can, kind of subsume some of the others. So then the how generally speaks to the credibility of that thing, how it works. People like to know, kind of like, oh, well, is it, going to be this way or that way? And then the why, right? Why should we care? Gives them not only like the understanding of the thing, but also motivation to do it or to follow through. And I realize as I'm like saying all of this, I'm not doing a very good job of actually doing it because I'm like babbling a little bit. But again, there's a difference between kind of off the cuff communication and prepared statements like elevator pitches.
Well, and if you look at advertising, it's actually the exact reverse of what you said. Start with why.
Okay,
right?
Yes.
This is, for people like this,
yes.
This is going to do X for you. This is the why you care, right?
Yep.
And then either of the other things you could do in eventually, a lot of times people just don't care about the how until they already know how they're what the why is,
True.
How they're going to benefit
yes.
from it, right? And so like a lot of times I feel like the pattern I see is why, what, how.
Yes.
Right.
And that again, for those types of like advertisements, for sure, definitely is a thing. What got me thinking of this particular framework, and they're not in a specific order, but yesterday, as in my little room for Global Republic, someone in our group had created this new room, and they have ippun pitchi for their rooms, right? Like a 1-minute pitch where you tell people what your room is. And I had kind of challenged her the other day to do it in English. And she was like, okay. And so she did. And in that case, the what comes first, right? It's this is my room that I'm going to do. And then blah, 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 other stuff after that. So
I'd still do it the other way.
Okay.
In almost any business communication.
Yeah.
The relevance. So, like, psychologically, this is an interesting thing, too. We see what something is good for before we register what it is.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, psychologically, this runs really, really deep. The purpose of a thing is more central to how we perceive it than, like, the nature of the object, the appearance, the label, etc.
Yeah. Well, and like, when I think about it from that type of, like, convincing perspective, I can definitely see that being, like, yes, if... And that's kind of how, we framed our VSLs and, other things like that. And I think, it's an interesting thing. I'm like, okay, like if people already know you're going to be introducing a room, do you have to follow the kind of standard format of here's my room, here's what we do? It's interesting. It definitely would, one, draw more attention to do it that way and again be more effective.
How would you like to have a place where you can find joint ventures and people to collaborate with?
Yeah.
This is my room. This is specifically for people who work in complementary fields, blah, 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 to find each other and create joint ventures such as XYZ.
Yeah. And as I'm hearing that, this is so interesting. I love communication because of these things.
Right.
That sounds like an advertisement rather than a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's the difference that I have in my mind. Like, if you're just talking to a friend, you don't generally start with why. You start with the what, and, you know, like, but.
So, and I'm ahead of you on this. I was thinking about that.
Yeah, right?
Because, right, when you have a friend, you already have an assumed context. So
Yes.
if I tell a RPG nerd, hey, I found this cool RPG, right? I don't have to explain why that's cool. He already knows. We already have that shared context, right? And so, like, that's one of the reasons, and I think this is why we default to what a lot, is because we're talking with people with whom I shared a context. We share a context.
Yeah.
Like, I remember in 5th grade, somebody's current event was that Sailor Moon was now available in the United States. And I'm like, what the fudge? Like, why do I care? Why is this current event? Now, if I go to Meg right now and say, hey, I found this cool anime, this cool silly anime, we love ones that like make fun of the genre. So there's like, was it Romantic Killer or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I found that. I go to Meg and I say, hey, I found this Romantic Killer thing. And she knows the context is that this might be fun for us to watch together. I don't even have to say that because we built that context.
Yeah,
and
he doesn't have to come and say, would you like to have fun doing a thing with me? Right? Like,
I'll try that more often. See how it works.
Well, and so, yeah, it's so funny too, because I also feel like almost programmed, right, to hear that as like a sales pitch and then to want to shut that down, which is interesting. But that concept of context is really important. Most of the people in these rooms where we're doing the Ippun Pichi are people who share context. And so you don't necessarily have to do that. However, right, assuming there are new people, honestly, the other way would be better. And so it's really, really fascinating.
Well, and so one, I think the thing you brought to this that I hadn't considered is like the use of why, like the switching the order as a marker of intimacy and like relationship, right? Where you assume if someone starts with the why, then it's an ad. And I would have to say part of that is probably just because the examples I'm giving aren't super good and I'm not primarily an advertiser. Right? So like in a natural conversation, what does this look like? Hey, what are you working on? This, but I'm stuck here. I wonder if we could X.
Yeah.
Right? Which is leading with the, I think we could do this thing that would be good. Like, yeah, I'd like to do that. Well, let's think about how we do that, right? Like, there definitely are conversations where that can evolve naturally.
That still started with the what, though. What can we do, right? I mean, I guess
no, it started with, like...
the problem.
Right. It started with the problem, and then like some kind of goal, a why, and then like, all right, you know, what could we do to achieve that goal, right? There definitely are ways that people lead with that.
Yeah.
So,
but, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it generally is in persuasive communication from everyone I hear. It's lead with the why. That's, you know, Simon Sinek. That's to Charisma on Command YouTube, where they just kind of ad hoc analyze celebrities and what they do. It's you know, you lead with, you know, when you're introducing yourself, lead with your mission, not with what you do or how you do it. Right? That kind of thing.
Very much so. So yeah, I love it. It's so cool. I love communication.
All right. So when you thought of asking for stuff as a subject, was that just random, or was there something in specific you were thinking about?
Specific, definitely. So as I've been doing my outreach and thinking of ways that I can kind of increase that engagement, one thing that I realize I have been kind of avoiding is asking for testimonials. Because that feels awkward and weird and But it is something that I would like to have on my website and as part of my marketing strategy. And so it's not something that will come unsolicited generally. Like, can I write you a testimonial? I've never, ever had that. And back when I was just doing regular tutoring, I did at one point reach out to my clients and have them write some testimonials, which I still have, so I'll probably include a few of those. But I would like to have something that is really relevant to what it is that I'm doing now. And the people who are in this room with me every day, it seems like it would not be a huge ask, right? But there's still kind of that mental, like, I have to ask them for something. Yeah, it's awkward and hard.
What's awkward and hard about it?
So yeah, if you know, like the concept of give and take, right? I'm a giver. I'm not allowed to take, or I don't know. Like it's just part of my paradigm, I guess, of the way that I exist in the world, which is I don't ask for stuff. By default. Now, I can learn to and everything like that, and I can kind of resist that default, but I have a hard enough time even recognizing what it is that I need, let alone asking for it. So, yes. The psychology of Meg.
But why is that your default?
I mean, we could get into, like, you know, my childhood and stuff like that, but, yeah.
What about it makes you uncomfortable?
There's always like that possibility for rejection, right? That someone might say no. Or it's not even so much rejection, but the idea that I might be putting someone else out or causing someone else to have to work on my behalf.
Why is causing someone else to work on your behalf bad?
Because people are busy and this gets into like psychology stuff. This is really good though. Like this exercise right here, the getting down. Why is that like the 7 whys? Right. Oh my gosh! But it's hard to do this on camera.
I mean, we could take a break and pick this up another time.
No. I think this is good, honestly. And like, I am generally an open book. Although this is not something that I've broadcast to other people. Although I don't really mind when I think about it. So, okay. So the question was, why can't I ask, or why can't I put people out?
Why is other people working for you uncomfortable or bad?
Because I mean, this kind of comes down to self-worth. I don't feel like I'm worth that unless I am giving them something greater in return. Right.
And so the idea, so you're judging your value by how much you're giving, and actually them giving back to you levels the playing field and lowers your relative worth.
Ooh, yes. Or yeah. I mean, that and...
Or puts you close to a risky state where if they're doing more, then you know, your value goes down.
Yeah. And that if that imbalance, you know, if even like we get close to that point where my value is less than, you know, what I'm giving, that, you know, that's where the rejection would come. Mm-hmm. So and if I'm not doing enough to value or to you know, contribute to this relationship, that they will end the relationship. Which I know, like, logically is so not even close to what's happening.
Yeah.
But again, that is a default that I have. I really like people to like me.
Well, and I'm trying to think of what, I mean, obviously the thing that would disprove this the most is for you to have a relationship where, like, it is lopsided and someone, it, like, not unhealthy, not like a codependent relationship, but like one where someone's just giving you a lot of stuff, giving you, or not like material objects, but like giving you a lot of effort and time and help, and not getting a lot in return. I don't know if you have any of those relationships. Like, the first thing that comes to mind, obviously, is like religion, a concept of God, right? Someone on whom you have nothing to give him, yes, but like from whom you're asking. Like, and I think that may be one of the reasons why a thoughtful practice of religion can be really powerful is because it's really hard to find someone like that in life where, like, you wouldn't, for instance, want in a marriage an unbalanced relationship.
Right.
But, like, a lot of people really don't have you have parent relationships, but that varies from person to person, like the mileage you get from parents. But I would say, like, my relationship with them is, that they give me a lot more than I give them.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and with my parents, like, obviously they provided me for me growing up, but I was always very independent. And even, as far as the stuff that they did provide for me, that was kind of that's a given, right? Someone, I would hope, right? They give birth to you, they put a roof over your head, would be the ideal situation there. And so, but as far as, like, relying on them for any type of emotional or academic or...
Well, you were one of 6 kids, right?
Yeah.
And,
yes. Yeah.
And, some of those kids were a handful, and you were not.
Yep.
So you didn't get as much attention.
And I liked the independence. Like, This is not like I had to be independent
but you were forming that pattern from a young age.
Exactly.
But the idea of, one, it's like, it would be a nice world if everyone knew someone who just gave them a little more or paid attention. I've noticed this sometimes before, and usually, like, this is kind of weird territory where, like, there's someone who puts a lot of effort into trying to be your friend, and you're like, oh, cool, like, I kind of like you, but you don't put the same effort back. I've had that. But that usually isn't a great situation. So, Grandparents. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's a great example of someone, because, it doesn't have to be someone who gives you a ton all the time, right? You don't interact with them as much, but a lot of times a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle that you're close with, someone else, is someone who puts in, a lot of, I'm trying to think, like, of attention that does not need to be reciprocated.
Yeah. Yep. And it also is a little bit removed from the complexities of the parent-child relationship, where there's also, like, discipline and things like that. And, so I'm specifically thinking about my mom's parents who passed a couple of years ago. Miss them terribly. But when I think about that relationship, like, that is one where I got everything and I hardly gave back at all, I feel like. It was just being able to be... That was really nice.
Well, and how are you feeling about that relationship?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And a little sad because I miss them.
Yeah. Well, and I think the world would be a better place, right, if there were more people that were grandparently, i.e., they don't have to be there all the time. It's not like a codependent relationship for most people, for whom, like, you have to be there, but like, when they're available, they give you a little bit extra.
And I think one of the reasons why I worry that, about the rejection is that that has not been my experience with people. That people are very quick to cut you out of their life or, reject you for whatever reason.
Or they're just busy with their own stuff and they ghost you, right?
Yes, it has nothing to do with me most of the time, I'm sure. But it is one of those things that, like, if everyone was like my grandparents, that would be amazing. But they're not. And so I can't trust that, these people will, because I've had enough experiences where they didn't, and negativity bias and all of that.
And most people are busy, right? They're not gonna recognize that you need anything, and they don't even recognize the option to be, in that position, grandparently, but how in the world would you give the option to rise to the occasion? Yeah, and you just ask. Right. And it's this, I think it's coming to a negativity versus positivity bias, right? If you make a habit of asking, you will find more grandparents, right? People who are willing to just disinterestedly give you a little bit more of your time. I try and do that as a coach with people. I try and, like, people ask me for help with something, and I try and give my best advice with caveats that, like, I have never done a successful Kickstarter, but I have heard from people who have. I've been to conventions of nerds where people talk about it. This is what I've heard.
Yeah.
Or, a little bit more in my wheelhouse. I had a friend who wanted to do market research, and he's like, this is taking forever. And I'm like, well, if you know your target audience and you can find them in a search and you can write good market copy, then I know exactly the tool for you. And I gave him something he could use to find people in 20 minutes, and then out of 100 people got 10 responses, 10% response rate.
Good.
I know I asked him for the copy. I'm like,
Dang.
you're clearly better at this marketing copy thing than I am.
Either that or he's just really good at targeting his audience.
Well, yeah, I asked him about that. And I think part of it, he's like, well, I think I have really good cred with this because of XYZ. Plus, I said up front, I'm not selling anything. I'm just doing market research. Anyway, so he shared with me, and it was great copy, but it's always good to hear back. But, like that, it's not like I charged him for that suggestion, right? And so, I think you have to be wary of people who are trying to create a codependent relationship, who are constantly asking, and there are some people who are chronically in need, and they're kind of doing the same thing. They're trying to get a lot from a very small group of people, rather than making the ask a casual part of their broad thing of what they do, and then allowing select individuals to find them. And I think that's another difference, right? When you have a small in group, and you want a lot from them.
Yep. That's well, and it's interesting too, just like kind of taking a step back and looking at the various communities that I've belonged to over the years and things. But yeah, I always worry that I'm the person who's like asking and asking and asking. I'm like, no, it's okay. But also, having I don't know, just what's the word for it? Like, awareness is not the exact word, but like understanding reality in a way that is different from my perception of reality, right? Recognizing that my perception of reality is colored by my experiences and my biology and my chemistry and all of that fun stuff. And so it may be different from the actual objective reality.
Yeah. Well, and if you give regularly, right, you're open to giving.
Yes.
And if you ask casually, i.e. not making it a big deal for any one individual person, although asking individuals for help that they can provide, like individual people that you've worked with, is going to generally get you more responses. But when I ask my coachees for this, I give them a sense of suggestion, like these are the things, like I have a testimonial about it. It's okay if you don't have a recommendation along these lines, but if you do, I would love to share that, because that would be super helpful for me. And again, with asking, I try and emphasize how helpful things are to give people a chance. Again, with asking, you're giving them a chance to help somebody else, which makes them feel good, right?
It's true. Framing it that way. And all of these people that I have in my mind, like, I know they'll be like, oh, of course, here, and, like, send it to me right away. It's not going to be a big deal. There's still always that kind of like emotional affect, though, that it's one of the reasons why I have put it off, until now. And so I think a good thing moving forward will be to, understand that asking for testimonials is normal. But also that it doesn't have to be this huge thing that I've built up in my mind of like, I'm asking for a kidney. No, I'm asking for like 20 words. Right. Like,
and focus on making the process of someone volunteering and giving to you, giving you that testimonial a pleasant one, right?
Yeah, right?
Like, how are you going to thank them? Think through that.
Thank you.
But also, it also gets easier when you know specifically what you're going to say. So, like, what words are you going to say to ask for the testimonials?
Probably just, hey, I'm working on filling out my website and other things as far as my marketing. I could really use a few testimonials. I know that you've mentioned in our, kind of rooms that some of this has been helpful for you. Would you be willing to just write a short testimonial that I could put on my website?
Yeah. You could even start with a thank you. hey, I really appreciate those things you said about the room.
Ooh.
I need a testimonial. Could you kind of like take that feedback and a little testimonial that I can use on my website?
I like that. That's good.
Right? Start with the, again, like
Start with hi.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's start with a thank you, actually.
Start with gratitude. And actually,
right.
honestly, though, the starting with gratitude, I feel like is one of the best philosophies for life.
Yeah. Well, and again, the discomfort of asking for something is really rooted in thinking about yourself.
Yep.
Right? But actually, when you turn that around and think first about like them, you know, the thank you comes, you know, more naturally, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm thanking them, and then giving them a chance to, you know, so they feel good about it, and giving them a chance to do more of that if they feel good about it. And then, you know, that follows up with like all asks. At the basis of it is like, you know, if you can't ask without being offended by a no, there's probably some personal work to do. But as long as that last thing, as long as you can, you know, keep up the same tone of positive relationship, even if they say no, then that's giving someone an opportunity. Like, if there are negative repercussions for not doing this, it becomes something else.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and recognizing that I would think like no less of any of them for saying no if they did say no. Like
that's a check. Like all of this caveat, like asking is good. I'm like, okay, right. I'm kind of intentionally not addressing kind of like a codependent level of neededness.
Yes.
And that's like, that is the asterisk. That's not what I'm dealing with. I'm not a therapist. And so, you know, there are asterisks. This isn't always true, but like for the most part, many people's default is to not ask, to feel like they need to in relationships that they're weighing consciously to get, or that are important to them, to be, you know, giving more and never in anyone else's debt. But relationships really grow on reciprocity.
They do. They do.
And they can't have that if you never ask for something.
Yeah. And I really like that kind of point of, I mean, really the asterisks of the codependency, I think is an important one because, like, you know, when I hear that, like, oh, you know, that doesn't even come on my radar. That's not even an issue that I would be offended if they said no at all.
Right. But somehow you're afraid that if you ask, you might be seen like that, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
right?
well,
as needy or
yeah. So it's just it's interesting. But like if I think of like what would actually happen in that, I would be fine. Oh, okay. That, you know, recognizing that I'm not dependent on their yes for me is one, like, oh yay, I'm not so ridiculously needy.
You've got a lot of people you could ask.
Yeah, that too. And it helps to deepen the relationship. And I love these people. And like one of them, oh my goodness, there's so much that I could like get into, but we're already at a half hour. So maybe I'll talk about her tomorrow. She's the one who did the pitch, but I'm going to probably even ask her to help me with VSL.
Nice.
Because I guess we'll just do it quickly. She did the English pitch, right? Which was good. I mean, it was great. It was a good direct translation of the Japanese that she did. And then I took it and then kind of made my own version of what, you know, a native speaker would do, which she then really liked. And she's going to use that and do a thing. And so I'm like, oh, if I could have like a video of you doing your original one and then the one that I helped you with.
That would be great.
Right?
That's a great idea.
Thank you. Well, and especially since, like, one, she's gorgeous. Two, I love her idea, and I really think it's something that could take off in the U.S., so be on the lookout. It'll be, like, the new Konmari thing.
Right.
But yeah, also, I think it would be really great for, like, my own marketing stuff.
And for your Japanese audience watching this, asking for things is good.
Yeah. So, and Americans too, honestly.
Right.
Like,
I mean, everyone, but I feel like even Japanese people are more culturally, right? Like, you don't even ask someone to refill your water for you. It's expected that somebody else shouldn't be watching your water and refilling it for you at the table, right?
Which I
that
love
kind of thing.
about Japanese culture.
I mean, yes, people are very thoughtful, but especially when dealing with Americans who are not trained to do that, but who are somewhat more comfortable with asking, although it's hard for everybody. Then, or most people, then, asking is okay. But yeah, start with the thank you. And don't apologize for asking.
Yep. Yes. Good point. No apologies.
Like, it's not, what is it? Jamashimasu. Like, it's a bother. Right. Right? It's a bother. Nope. Just,
I'm getting in your way. Shitsureshimasu.
You have been so helpful. Thank you so much. Could I ask for one more thing?
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? Etc. Like, the thank you is always, at least in the US, more appropriate. Now, like, in Japan, people might be expecting to hear that, right?
Well, there's the giri-on thing,
right.
The, obligation and whatever kind of, culture that exists.
And there's a cultural difference, right? Like, someone might, I don't know, this is, I'm speculating, in Japan here, ojamashimasu, like, I'm being a bother, and like, that gives them the chance to be generous, right? And whatnot. Like, they literally, it may function almost in a way, as a way to help that person feel good. But in the United States, you don't really have that as much. People just feel like awkward if you insist that you're being a bother.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. So
there's so many ways to apologize in Japan.
Yeah, there are a lot. Anyway, asking for things is good. Business tip, I've been talking about focus. I've been talking about having a dedicated space, or at least doing things to your space to help signal a work mindset, a work default, and some hacks to do that. I think yesterday's was how to simplify your tasks or make them more complex so they hit a nice level of challenge, so you don't either get too bored or overwhelmed by them. And then the other thing, I think, would be, like, my advice for today, and I'll keep it short, would just be to play around with the length of time you're working. So, there are people like Cal Newport and Deep Work that say, like, certain types of, like, deep thought require 3 or 4 hours. On the other hand, like, working for 1 or 2 hours in a chunk rather than, like, working for 4 hours straight gives you more primacies and recencies. So your brain remembers the first thing, a primacy, right? And it remembers the last thing, a recency, more. And so if you actually break things down into 1 hour chunks or 2 hour chunks, you have more primacies and recencies. The first thing you worked on in the chunk and the last thing you worked on in a chunk, you have more of those. So I would say, especially for learning things, learning tasks, breaking it down into 1 or 2 hour chunks with small breaks is probably more helpful. But then maybe when you're doing, like, heavy synthesis of things you've already learned, like something big and difficult, actually having a larger chunk of time can be more helpful. But I mean, it's going to depend on the individual. So just play around with how long you're working at a stretch to see what the optimal focus is for you. And it's probably going to be different task to task.
Yep. I like that.
All right. So until tomorrow, make big changes, one small habit at a time.